In a moment charged with symbolism and high political drama, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni walked into the White House not just as a European leader, but as the self-proclaimed bridge between a fractured European Union and a resurgent United States under Donald Trump's leadership. The stakes were sky-high: trade wars, threatened tariffs, and the looming shadow of global economic realignment. What followed was not just a diplomatic visit, it was a bold audition to reset the balance of transatlantic power. Scene: the Oval Office meets Rome's firebrand Washington. Buzzed with anticipation as Meloni became the first European leader to visit President Trump since his abrupt imposition and temporary suspension of harsh 20% tariffs on EU imports. Though the tone in the Oval Office appeared relaxed and even jovial, behind the smiles was a simmering urgency. Meloni, under pressure from EU partners and Italian businesses alike, had flown in with one clear mission: to defuse a looming transatlantic trade war. Trump, with his trademark bravado, didn't mince words. "There will be a trade deal, 100%, he declared, "but it will be a fair deal." Meloni nodded in agreement, later reinforcing her stance with a phrase that echoed her host's campaign-style rhetoric. "The goal for me is to make the West great again." It was a soundbite tailor-made for headlines and for Trump's approval. An uneasy history of tariffs tensions between the EU and the US have escalated sharply under Trump's renewed presidency. His blanket 10% baseline tariff on almost all foreign imports, Europe included, shook allies and adversaries alike. The most controversial move was the 20% retaliatory tariff targeted specifically at the European bloc, which Trump claimed was formed to screw the United States. Though the punitive tariff has been paused until July, the damage to relations is far from over. Meloni has publicly decried the tariffs as absolutely wrong, warning that they would hurt European and American economies alike. Her decision to visit Trump amid this climate speaks volumes. Her aides described the trip as a commercial peace mission, one designed not only to protect Italy's trade interests, but to stake her claim as the continent's Trump whisperer. Meloni. As the transatlantic translator, Meloni's pitch to Trump was carefully calibrated. She praised the former, and now returning, US president for his firm stance on illegal immigration and his critique of woke ideology, topics that also define her domestic platform. "Change is already happening," she told Trump, referencing the latest EU announcement on safe migration countries. Trump nodded approvingly. Despite her alignment with Trump on culture and security, Meloni was walking a diplomatic tightrope. While Trump favors bilateral deals, EU leaders are wary of any one member acting outside the bloc's shared economic policies. Still, Meloni scored a subtle diplomatic win. Trump agreed to visit Rome later this year with a promise to meet other European leaders, including European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. It's a small victory, but one that may carry heavy symbolic weight in the coming months. China, tariffs, and the global domino effect trade discussions with Europe were not Trump's only concern. On the same day as his meeting with Meloni, Trump addressed questions about US-China trade tensions. The current 145% tariff on Chinese imports has rocked global supply chains and raised fears of retaliatory action. "I may not want to go higher," Trump said. "I may want to go to less because at a certain point people aren't going to buy." Despite claiming that Chinese representatives had reached out a number of times, he emphasized he was in no rush to finalize a deal. For Meloni, the implications are huge. If a full-blown US-China trade war reignites, Europe could get caught in the economic crossfire. That's why her meeting with Trump wasn't just about securing Italy's future, it was about trying to stabilize a turbulent global order. The Rome-Washington axis. Though no concrete breakthroughs on tariffs were made during this visit, Meloni succeeded in repositioning herself as a trusted figure in Washington's shifting political terrain. Her upcoming meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance in Rome could further solidify this new Rome-Washington axis, particularly if she continues advocating for Trump's re-engagement with Europe on her terms. Meloni's praise of Trump's business acumen seemed to charm the U.S. president. "Forgive me if I promote my country, but you're a businessman and you understand me," she said with a smile. Trump, grinning, responded with compliments of his own, praising Meloni's leadership and even gushing about her beautiful Italian name. A confident but cautious optimism back home, Meloni faces a mixed reception. While her supporters hail her for defending Italy's national interests, critics, such as opposition leader Carlo Calenda, have expressed unease about her cozy relationship with Trump. Calenda admitted, however, that she achieved two very positive outcomes: sticking to the EU line on Ukraine and persuading Trump to meet EU officials in Italy. Still, the trip wasn't without tension. When asked about Italy's relatively low defense spending, just 1.49% of GDP, below the 2% NATO threshold, Meloni briefly bristled. Trump has repeatedly chastised European allies for not pulling their weight, and this remains a thorny issue. Nevertheless, Meloni insists Italy is on track. "We expect to meet the 2% target by the next NATO meeting," she promised. Conclusion of Part 1. The Washington visit marked a high-stakes test for Giorgia Meloni, and she passed it with careful diplomacy, tactical flattery, and a shared ideological message. Though no trade deal has been finalized, she leaves with stronger ties to Trump and a position as Europe's informal envoy to an America increasingly defined by nationalist realignment. The meeting that didn't seal a deal. Yet it's easy to measure diplomatic success by signed agreements and official statements. But Meloni's visit wasn't about immediate wins. It was about positioning. While she didn't walk away with a formal rollback of the looming 20% EU tariff, she walked away with something possibly more valuable: access and influence. Trump, known for operating on personal rapport more than policy alignment, seemed taken with Meloni's blend of ideological support and political pragmatism. The two leaders spoke in sync about trade, culture wars, illegal migration, and NATO defense burdens. Their chemistry wasn't forced. It felt familiar, natural, and in many ways strategic. Meloni carefully aligned her language with Trump's worldview. "The West is under threat," she warned, "but we can make it strong again, together." That message, echoed with a nod to Trump's own slogan, didn't just win applause. It signaled her understanding of Trump's ego and the importance of building personal alliances in the age of populist politics. J.D. Vance in Rome. A continuation of influence. Her diplomatic strategy didn't end in Washington. The next day, she hosted U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance in Rome, a move symbolic of her deepening American ties. The meeting, which insiders described as warm and productive, was more than a photo op. It was a continuation of her mission to solidify Italy's role as a conduit between a combative U.S. presidency and a hesitant European Union. Vance, considered one of Trump's closest ideological allies, reportedly praised Meloni for her leadership and expressed interest in working with Italy on joint initiatives concerning migration control, trade standardization, and energy resilience. If those talks evolve into formal collaborations, Meloni may very well cement her reputation as the only EU leader with real influence in Washington. A divided Europe watches cautiously. Back in Europe, the reaction to Meloni's performance is a mixture of admiration and unease. Many leaders are relieved she didn't give Trump an opening to divide the EU on trade or Ukraine. Others, however, worry she's too quick to embrace a man who once described the European Union as a threat. Meloni's invitation to Trump to visit Rome and to meet with EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is being interpreted as a subtle move to pull Trump into more collaborative waters. But will Trump take the bait? His populist instincts still favor bilateral deals, and his disdain for EU bureaucracy is well known, yet Meloni's gamble may pay off. If she can facilitate a respectful meeting between Trump and EU leadership in Rome, she could reset the tone of US-EU engagement. The optics of such a summit, hosted in Italy by a leader who speaks both Trump's language and Brussels code, could be a turning point. The real stakes: trade, power, and global positioning, the economic stakes of Trump's tariffs cannot be overstated. A 10% baseline tariff on foreign imports already impacts Italian exporters in sectors ranging from agriculture to luxury goods. The threat of a 20% tariff is a looming economic storm that no European leader can ignore. Trump's reasoning is characteristically blunt. Everybody wants to make a deal. And if they don't want to make a deal, we'll make the deal for them. For Meloni, the task is to turn that bravado into negotiation. Even as she attempts to smooth things over, Trump remains unpredictable. His suggestion that he may go lower on tariffs to encourage American consumption hints at a strategy that isn't purely protectionist, but deeply transactional. Meloni's challenge is to ensure Italy and Europe offer enough value in Trump's cost-benefit analysis to avoid further economic punishment. Meloni's domestic and global balancing act at home, Meloni used the visit to spotlight her leadership. On the global stage, she spoke of falling inflation and rising employment in Italy. "I'm proud to sit here as the Prime Minister of a stable, reliable Italy," she said, before smiling at Trump and adding, "Forgive